Okay, we're live. Okay, so I'm Chandler Klebs, and you don't see me right now because I'm showing my unicorn chessboard instead. But anyway, I'm here with Pafo Ortiz, and we're going to be talking about veganism. We're going to be talking about why people go vegan, why people, what it's really about, because people aren't always getting it. And I have a lot of experience with this, and trying to educate people, while and yet people call you an extremist, and they think that you're some kind of tyrant, some kind of dictator. They make all these accusations against you, and say that you're like this elitist person who thinks you're better than everybody, when really it's about not knowing that we're not more important than anybody else, including the non-human animals. And Pafo, I know you agree with this. I know that you're vegan just like I am, and we have a lot of experience. We know about the industries. We know why there are so many harms, not just to meat, but dairy and eggs, and the list could go on with honey and all sorts of other things that happen as a result from thinking that these other animals exist just to serve us. So, and I'm sure you have a lot to say too. Should I continue, or did you want to start by saying something?
Dude, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. There's so much that I could say. My brain is just frazzled right now because I'm not even sure where to begin. I'm currently sort of in a debate with a good friend of mine, and one of the key points here is that a lot of times vegans are accused of being sanctimonious, or we think that we're, like as you said, we think that we're better than other people, and it literally comes down to the fact that we are privy to information that those people are not privy to. And if there is anger and frustration, it ends up like being interpreted as if we're attacking people. But what we're really against, and what we're really so angry and hurt and emotional about, is the cruelty and the harm and the atrocity and what's going on. So you got to think of it like that that's what's in our minds, but that's not what's in their minds. What's in their minds is they're looking at their food. They have a disconnection. They don't comprehend what that animal went through to get to their plate. There's a complete disconnect there. So you just got to imagine that we're coming from like two different places essentially. If you took that person and just exposed them to the same information and let them watch the documentaries, let them watch the videos, let them see the undercover footage, they would be right there with you. I firmly believe that this is just a case of educating people. It just comes down to sharing the information. And like every single debate, every argument and conversation, it's pointless. It could just be avoided, and it's counterproductive until they are brought to that same level of awareness. So what we should really just be doing, instead of arguing and debating and defending it, because these are all just statistics and facts, and it's just information, it's just head knowledge, and you're seeing it on paper, you're seeing it typed on a computer screen, it has no meaning to you. But when you take a lamb and a dog and put them side by side, and you say, which one do you kill and which one do you play with and call a pet, then it starts to make sense. You see, when you show people the reality of like what's going on, there's just so much I could say. When you help them to realize how unnecessary it is for us to be consuming animals, then we make progress. But until then, like, yeah, you're just banging against a brick wall. It's just like it ends up being all about the messenger instead of the message. It ends up being all about how you're communicating, your tone, or you're telling them what to do. You're trying to like you're trying to tell them how to live their life, and this is a big thing, and this is with my friend, who I will just say we'll just keep him unnamed for now. My friend has a big aversion to sort of authority figures and people telling him what to do, and he doesn't like anyone acting sanctimonious or anyone acting you know, as you said, like elitist and portraying, you know, that they're better than someone else, or that their ideas are more accurate or more you know
Yeah,
their ideas are
like
more perfect and more reliable, and that but that's really what it comes down to is just information. So because of that aversion, because of his issues with, like, you know, people wanting to control, or people acting like they're better than him, he's turned off by it, and he actually is like opposed to the vegan movement and feels like it's not the answer, that it's an extremist mentality, and that what's actually required is you know, balance and more permaculture and just sustainability, and he has his own take on everything, but it ends up just being another compromise, because, you know, I can go on about that a little more, but
yeah.
you want to say something?
I
Go
have a
ahead.
few things to say.
But
See, here's what's really tricky about Apopho, and here's the important thing: is this is a situation unlike any other situation. And here's what I mean, because now, to me, this is kind of like we see some man raping some woman, and we're trying to talk him out of it. That's what it's kind of like. It's comparable to that. He's like, oh, you just think you're better than me, and I don't take orders from no one. Quit trying to control my life. I can rape who I want to. You know, that's the way I view the situation. It's a little bit.
actually, a more accurate analogy would be, you see a parent that's like beating their child, and then you come up and you're like, you know, what the hell are you doing? Like, and they're going to turn around and say, mind your own business. This is my child. This is my kid. You know, I'll discipline him the way that I want. It's none of your business. And because there is this attitude of sort of authority and ownership, and that's really a more accurate analogy, is because
You know,
we have the
Papa,
right. We're
yeah,
justified.
Papa, I gotta
Like
say,
we're in the.
you're right. You're absolutely right. That's a much better example, because along with parenthood often comes this idea of ownership, that they own the child and can do what they want with the child. And this is problematic. That the idea that of child ownership or pet ownership or livestock ownership, whatever, this idea of ownership, it's this mindset that says that you can do anything you want to something because you own it, and therefore nobody else can tell you what to do or not do. And it completely just
So who's
disregards
really?
the lives and the needs and the desires of that animal, whether it be a human or something else.
What we're really talking about is speciesism, and this idea of that human beings are elevated above the other non-human animals. That human beings have more of a right to dominate and exploit and control and manipulate and harvest and basically use other life forms, because they're weaker than us, because they don't have a voice, because they don't have really a say in it, because we have a need, a perceived need, and then, you know, we see them as a commodity. Then we can you know, draw our own sustenance or survival from, completely overlooking, as you said, that we're talking about individuals, we're talking about souls, we're talking about a you know, specific manifestations of life that have as much capacity for pleasure and pain and emotion as we do. So that's what's missing, is there's just this disconnect, and it comes down to cultural conditioning, um, cognitive biases, you know, habit, tradition, all these different things. But what it really comes down to, and what I want to really address is, okay, my friend and I are on a path, okay, we're on a let's say we're on a mission, okay, to institute a biocentric philosophy, a philosophy that puts life at the forefront, that makes life and living organisms the most important thing. How can you say that your philosophy is life-centered when you can disregard certain life forms and then you know, like care for and raise and nurture others, or say that somehow my life and my needs are of more importance than this other organism? I mean, it's not a do or die, kill or be killed situation. It's unnecessary. Nobody gets this. It's unnecessary to harvest and slaughter animals. We can absolutely live and thrive on a plant-based diet, and in most cases, it's absolutely better for the environment, better for your health, better for your body, and it's to do the opposite is actually detrimental to human evolution, I believe, to
Yeah,
the value system
absolutely.
that's being perpetuated, the value system or lack of that's being perpetuated when you can, kill and slaughter and mutilate and enslave and do whatever you wish to another life form, then that bleeds over into everything else. That mean a lot of people talk about how there's connections to racism, to sexism, that speciesism is sort of like basically, you can judge the character of a nation by how they treat their animals, right? And
Yeah.
it's true that you can judge a person's character by how he treats other life forms around him. And we know that, like, serial killers, one of the telltale signs are how they torture and mutilate small animals and stuff, and they're getting out their aggression. It's called displacement in psychological terms. So, like,
And
literally
I have another
displacing
saying.
your aggression.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Pablo, I have another saying. I've heard another saying that's similar that says you can tell the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. And
Right,
I
right.
think
These are
this
all
is
good
important.
ones that we
Yeah,
use.
and this is very important. And here's why. Because here's the deal. There's a huge difference between doing good for someone because you care about them and doing good for someone, treating them right just in order to get something from them. And I feel like this happens. I feel like people do this with their children. They do this with their spouses, and they do this with non-human animals often. It's this idea that they're still viewing that person, that animal, whatever you call them, as something that they need something from them. And here's the reality of it, Pafo. We do not need animal products. We do not have a need for these things. And since we do not need these things, there's no justification ever. And it's not a self-defense situation, it's really not. Instead, this is a case of just, it's senseless. It's what it is now, this is an important statement. I hope people get this.
There's money involved, man. It comes down to profit. I mean, it's the meat, egg, and dairy industry is absolutely the demand for it continues because there's so much money to be made in it, and people are oblivious. Like, continue the lies and the misconceptions and the cultural myths, and keep perpetuating this idea, and then they'll continue buying the meat. They'll continue. It gets marketed, it gets incorporated into our feel-good holidays, like all these different things. So I'm just saying there's a monetary aspect involved here as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The monetary aspect is very important, Pafo, and that's the truth. And of course, naturally, you and I, we're in agreement that money should be abolished completely. We should have a resource-based economy. We have the technology, we have the means. If only people, were all educated and weren't so stubborn, really, things could be so much better. But under the current system, I understand the financial motivation, but unfortunately, that in itself is another weird thing. It's kind of like, to what length do we go to obtain money? Sure, look, everybody in a money system, they need money to pay their bills. I get that, but are they willing to kill other humans for that money? Most of them are not. Yet they're fine with killing these other animals. So it really. Even with the money, it still just comes down to this view.
Keep going back to a fundamental ethic, yeah, that other life forms are lesser than us, that other life forms are less deserving of kindness and respect and dignity. That's what it really comes down to, is that the distinctions between us, between different organisms, creates a disparity there, where you literally you don't care as much about a chicken, because a chicken looks different than you, and it responds differently to its environment, and it doesn't have the same communicative abilities as you. So what we're talking about is that distinction that's just inherently there in nature, that there's so much biodiversity. That distinction needs to be done away with. Of course, there are different degrees of consciousness, different levels of awareness among life forms, and of course there's different levels of importance. Listen to me very carefully. Different levels of importance of individual life forms in relation to other life forms. Okay, that exists. But what we're talking about and what needs to be understood is that, like, the mentality needs to change. The entire mentality needs to change. And so, like, my friend is very defensive and feeling like he's being attacked or being criticized. And yet, what it comes down to is that I feel that he is an important influence in this community, in the pantheistic community, and that he represents something. And so, his ideal or his ethic, his value system is of absolute importance. It's not that, like, oh, he's vegetarian, he's not vegan, that's not good enough, I'm just going to try to make him vegan. I'm going to pick on him because because I like picking on him or something. I like to, like, stress him out. It's not that. It's because I think he is so important and so crucial to what we're doing that, like he needs to see the whole picture. He needs to see the truth, and he still hasn't watched Earthlings yet. He promised me.
Yeah, I understand fully, Paul. What you're saying here is it's a sign of respect in a sort of way. Basically, this guy he's a pantheist leader in a way, and because of that, he sets an example for so many people. And it's for this reason that I tend to be disappointed when some well-respected and well-listened-to scientists, say Bill Nye or Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris, when they blow it and they have this big logical fallacy or some ethical mistake,
Yeah,
I
they
get
don't
so
have
sad.
They really don't have any good reasons for it. Even Sam Harris said it. There's no justification for it. But it comes back to misinformation. He said he tried to be vegan for a while, and he felt like weak, and he wasn't getting, like, the protein he needed and stuff. And it just has to do with knowledge and information, and probably the fact that he wasn't eating enough frequently enough. And then he might have not been doing it for ethical reasons. He might have been doing it for nutrition or dietary reasons. And we've talked about this, that when a person goes vegan just for their health, they tend to waver and go back and forth, because it's not really a strong sort of ideal that they're clinging to there, that that holds them in that place where they're making the association. Like, for example, I mean, I don't care what people say about backyard eggs and a symbiotic relationship with bees and all these different things. When I think of eggs, when I think of milk and cheese and dairy, I think of pain and suffering. I immediately associate it now with cruelty, with exploitation, with horrible living conditions. And that's what needs to actually get burned into their minds. And it's not there. It's that what we consider to be food is harvested and produced through abhorrent means. And so once you make that association, like the other day I was thinking about buying some cookies, and I knew they weren't vegan and they looked really good. And I knew that there was probably eggs in it, and they didn't have a list of ingredients. But I sat there and I looked at it, and I said, I could just eat these. I mean, they're already made. I mean, these are the justifications that goes on in the vegan's mind. They're already made. They're already there. The damage is already done. What's the harm? But it's the principle. It's not that, like, at that moment I'm harming the animal that's probably already dead or has already been used up. But it's the principle of it. We're making a statement. It may seem, veganism may seem absolutist. Is that a word? It may seem extreme and dogmatic, but there's a reason for it. We say no animal products, nothing that comes from, an animal's body, nothing that is harvested through, the pain and suffering of other animals. It doesn't matter. It's because, like, we're trying to make an absolute statement. We're trying to swing the perception of the populace, like, back the other direction. Like, it's not that it's not that there can't be a farmer somewhere who's treating their chickens well, or someone who cares for horses and they have a good relationship with their horses and they would never mistreat them or abuse them and they ride them. It's not that these things in and of themselves are bad. It's that the entire philosophy of the culture needs to change, and that's what veganism is doing. It's making the point. Yeah. It's saying that animals aren't here for us. They have their own lives. They have their own agendas. They have, we need to show them respect and dignity? And why are you conserving some species and caring about some species and then completely disregarding others? And why do you have, cute, cuddly, fluffy pets that you would never wish to see any harm come to them, and yet the cute, cuddly little male chicks are ground up alive the first day that they're born, the first day that they're hatched, they're ground up
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah, and
So
see, Pafo, see,
make the
listen,
connection.
okay. Yeah, see, here's the deal. I know these topics so inside and out, man, and here's what I think, Pafo, is I think a lot of people, they just don't have the perception, like they don't have the deep level of thinking. They're just looking at the food on their plate and biting into it, thinking how yummy it is, Unfortunately, it's all about where does it come from. And I'll tell you right now, once I started becoming aware of where this stuff comes from, and I'm really surprised I didn't go vegan sooner. I'm really surprised. I know why I didn't, because it was never brought to my attention. It was just so
Yeah,
normal.
for me, it literally was just about exposure to the information. As soon as I was, well, I've told many people this story. I mean, it was through my pantheism. It's through biopan. I couldn't continue going on and on about having a love and respect for nature and making biological organisms, our first priority. You can't keep telling people to treat life forms with love and respect, and that nature is divine, and then continue chopping up and eating, mutilating, and killing animals, or allowing other people, paying other people to do it for you. And then it was like, well, there's all these justifications that goes through your mind, but then I recognize that like I'm trying to stand for something here. I'm on the side of life, okay? And there are many subtle nuances here that really need to be addressed, man. We could both ramble on forever. We can go on forever in passionate discourse about why it's better for the environment, why it's better for our bodies, why it's the answer to everything. But I really want to address the subtle nuances here that people miss, that are people like my friend have a tendency to just to misunderstand or misconstrue. So I don't know, like it's like just listening to you talk right now, Chandler. If I was someone else, if I was on the outside, if I was a carnist, if I was a meat eater, and I wasn't exposed to the same information, the information that we're talking about, and I was listening to this podcast, I could very easily say, man, that guy is so stuck up. He's like, so he's so sanctimonious, and he just literally thinks he's better than everybody just because he doesn't eat meat. And that can be the impression unless you crack open your mind, look inside Chandler's head, and let yourself see what he sees. You're literally looking at the suffering and the pain and the violence and how it's unnecessary. You're literally seeing the statistics, and you're aware of the environmental cost, and you're aware of the cancer rates and the correlations through like the China study with diabetes and heart disease and all these things that could be avoided that are a direct result of consuming animal products. So you're aware of these things, the other person isn't. They're just hearing what you say. We have to shift their focus away from us. It's not about us. It's not that we think that we're better than anybody. It's not that like we have these great big egos. It's the exact opposite. It's that we think that we're all part of this system, this interconnected system, and we don't have a right to dominate and exploit and manipulate others. And I say
Absolutely.
other non-human animals.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. And I have a few things to say about that. Now, first of all, this does fit into a life-centered philosophy. It absolutely does. And I would say it's an essential part. If your life-centered philosophy, it does not require veganism, then it's basically bullshit. It really is. No offense to those bulls there. We respect those animals, but we don't like shit. So anyway,
our language
yeah.
really needs an upgrade. And instead of calling someone a pig, we should call them a filthy human, an immoral, under-evolved human, instead of calling someone, an animal or whatever. Let's say, you're an animal that has no excuse, because we're all animals, and the pejoratives that we use in association with these farm animals are completely inaccurate. You know, that these
Yeah, I know.
animals are so
It's very
intelligent,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
And a
go
note
ahead.
about that, Pafo, it's so funny how people call someone an animal as an insult when it really isn't, because we are animals. That's just like, it's just like saying you are nothing but a human, you know, like if
Let's
humans
get
said
back
that to other humans, like it sounds really, really funny to when you just think of that. You're just calling someone what they are, but
yeah.
it's beside the whole point.
that
You
that
know,
gets back to the Judeo-Christian sort of duality of spirit and body. You know, as it can't the duality that was perpetuated and you know promoted, that the idea that spirit is good and pure and holy, and the flesh and the body is bad and ugly and sinful. So things that are physical, things that are material, it's been bred into us. These things are bad. They're lowly, and things that are sort of internal and spiritual. And so we think that we're the highest. We're the highest stage in evolution. You know, that we have evolved to this point, that since we have such incredible capacity to think and reason and ruminate and contemplate and build, you know, and design things and manipulate our environments, that gives us an edge. But it doesn't mean that we're, you know, fundamentally um, of more value than another life form. Because as we've said, you know, if the bees die out, you know, we're screwed. Like, we need the bees. We need our intestinal gut flora. You know,
yeah.
we need
Yeah,
other life forms
absolutely.
to
Yeah.
exist.
See, what that goes into is an interesting case where, yes, some species are more important as part of an ecosystem. Yeah, we can't survive without the bees, and we can't survive without bacteria. Humans die without the bacteria in their gut, you know? It puts things in perspective. But back to that whole thing about that dualism, you know, like this idea that there's the spirit that's good and the flesh that's bad. Like, I'm familiar with that as an ex-Christian, you know, I know all about that. But here's what's interesting about it. It's very bizarre because, you know, this idea that humans have souls, you know, as if they're the only living beings and those other animals are not. That's so foreign to me. There's no justification for that, you know. There's no reasoning that makes any sense of it. And here's the thing, man, is, you know, for example, like as far as like the whole pantheism and life-centered philosophy, like I'm down with it. But here's the thing about it. I think it's really, really sad that, you know, all of the major world religions, um, with the exception of Jainism, which isn't a major religion, it's a minority,
Right.
you know, do
I think
not have this.
Seventh Day Adventists are vegetarian as well.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, here's some interesting news, Pafo.
Some
My
strains of
my
Hinduism,
sister,
some strains of Buddhism, but yeah, but
yes,
by
yes.
and large, it's not really.
Right. I mean, yeah, the majority of the world is dominated by these three monotheistic religions that where a god literally commands animal sacrifice. You don't get much more carnage than that. That god, if it existed, would be the ultimate carnage, the enemy of us all, and there'd be no hope if you have an all-powerful meat eater god. But here's some interesting things. Now, my sister has actually been going vegan recently because she got involved with these Seventh-day Adventists who are actually teaching a vegan class and doing free food at these classes or whatever. So that's kind of good news. I mean, there are some.
There's strains of strains of thought, and there's certain a very progressive sort of non-literalist Christians who are moving in that direction. Not the fundamentalists, but other groups within Christianity that are using the Bible as justification for vegetarianism and veganism. You know, citing Genesis and how, you know, all the animals ate vegetation and stuff before the fall. So I mean, but as I always say, you can use the Bible to justify anything. I mean, it's a good thing that there's groups that are recognizing that, but that's more of a testament to human evolution as a whole, that societies we are ethically evolving collectively, you know. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's
In
not like,
fact,
oh, it said this all along, because it also says, you know, kill the heifer and slaughter the bull and sprinkle the blood, and God
Yeah.
likes the smell of the roasted flesh in his nostrils.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. See,
also in
here's the
there.
deal. This is the ultimate case of cherry picking. It really is, because the Bible has stayed the same for a really long time here, and that you've got all these different people who are ignoring the huge portions and then picking out a few verses to support an entire philosophy. And I
The
call
only way, it's the only way
yeah,
that any modern religion can actually exist is through cherry picking, because there's no that's the only way that it can actually exist, because you take it as a whole, it makes absolutely no sense. It's so archaic and outdated, and there are so many commands to do things that we would consider immoral and indecent right now. But go ahead, I'm going to interrupt you.
yeah, yeah, and I call the Bible an all-you-can-read buffet. Everything's in there, and people just take the parts out they want. But here's what's interesting: the very fact that people know which parts to avoid, like the system they go by, in order to avoid this part of the Bible and accept this other part. And it's what, that right there is their moral compass, their philosophy, their true religion, if you want to call it that. There's the guiding principle that they are going by, that they're basing this on.
Right.
And
Religion doesn't. Yeah, religion gets its morals from human beings, from Homo sapiens, not the other way around. Like we don't get our morals from you know from the holy text. The holy texts are a reflection of that time period, and then we pick and we choose, and then we interpret it and we live accordingly, according to like the level of evolution we're already at. Yeah.
yeah, so it's very interesting. And so what I'm hoping, Pafo, is that people evolve to a point where they end up like, for example, here's how it happens with me is, I came to the point, well, this causing this, there's no good reason for it. This causing of endless pain and suffering and killing these animals is wrong, even if God does command it. That's the point where I finally came to. So I do believe that
your morality surpassed the creators. Yeah, your morality surpassed the supposed divine being. Yep.
I know, and see, here's the ironic part, Pafo. Religious people will find this incredibly arrogant. You think you're morally superior to God? And I'm like, yes, I do, and it doesn't take much.
This gets back to This gets back to the authority of the Bible, that they're automatically from the get-go, from the outset, there is a preconceived, predetermined bias that the Bible is the ultimate authority. It's the inspired, infallible Word of God. So once you have already decided that, then everything that's in it, you then have to justify and stuff. That's where that comes from. I mean, and then so anything that deviates from it, homosexuality or whatever, I don't know, women's rights, then you're like, well, no, because it says right here. And yet, instead of in an intelligent way, I mean, we can go on about this forever, but instead of an intelligent, intellectual, logical way of finding out if that authority is verifiable, if it is if there's credence to it, instead of like researching and understanding like who wrote it, what time period, why did they write it, the motivations, all this kind of stuff, who the authors were, what was going on at the time, what culture did it come out of. Instead of doing that, they just take it at face value. It's like a magic 8-ball, and they ask questions and then it gives the answers. Well, the answers that are in there were written by people in the Bronze Age who didn't even know how the world works, didn't understand anything, that even an elementary school student knew more about science and physics, knows more about science and physics than these people who wrote these ancient writings. So you just gotta look at the source instead of just assuming the source to be infallible. Yeah.
Interesting about it, Pafo, is here's the deal. Almost everybody who is a religious person, with a few exceptions, was raised that way, and they were taught as a child to accept that holy book at face value and just believe it. And that child, when they do that, they don't know the history, they don't know why it was written, they don't know anything. They're just doing what the adults command them to do. That's what they're basically doing. And it's interesting because some people they end up rejecting the religion because they get into the historical and scientific facts, and that ends up persuading them that that religion cannot be factually accurate. And yet, here's this is my opinion, Pafo, is that's actually not the most important thing. It's actually more important, and this is quicker, to reject the religion as not just scientifically wrong, but morally wrong or ethically wrong. That's the key issue, because it's like that. And here's what it comes down to, Pafo, is like people will come at me trying to convince me of Christianity. Once in a while, it still happens, but the problem is it's already morally abhorrent. It's actually wrong to obey the orders of their God if it did exist, and it's and so that's the key issue there.
Chandler, I think we could this could be devoted to, you could start a whole nother show just about our problems with religion and stuff. And I don't want to deviate too far, but I mean we share the same, we share exactly the same sentiments when it comes to the Abrahamic faiths. But let's get back to the subject of veganism, because there's some points that I really want to just sort of articulate and tackle and explore, and it has to do with the naturalistic fallacies and the appeals to nature. This is the most common argument, excuse, justification, basically, nonsensical excuse that I encounter in all of my debates and my correspondence with people. And it essentially is this: if something occurs in nature, that makes it okay, that makes it good, that anything natural gets equated to what's good. And this is a complete what's the word? I mean, this goes against just common sense and logic and reason. There are a tremendous amount of things that occur in nature that we do not follow, that we don't emulate, that we as evolved human beings have moved beyond, and we don't look to nature to guide us in terms of morality and ethics. You there, Chandler? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm still here, man. But yeah, this appeal to nature. Yeah, this is very important, Pafo, because it comes up way too often. This appeal to nature, like, well, this happens in nature, and animals kill each other. Therefore, it's okay for us to kill the animals. And
I'm an animal. All animals are heterotrophic. I mean, many animals are heterotrophic. This is true. Life feeds on life, but like the life that we are completely able to feed on in America, let's just say in America, and in this modern age, okay, that life can be relegated to fruits and vegetables, plant-based. It can be we can do the least amount of harm to the environment, to our bodies, and to other life forms by adopting a plant-based diet. So it's irrelevant. It's not a solid argument, but it's the most frequent argument that I hear, and I'm even sad to say this is where my friend ends up going. But this is a little bit different. It's because he's a pantheist at heart. It's because on a certain level we are glorifying nature. We are trying to get back to the sort of like the wisdom that exists in nature. That's what we're trying to redirect the focus and the attention to. So it can be it can be an easy mistake to make, to say, okay, well then this is also what goes on in nature, so that's okay for us too, and that's all right for human society. But that is a complete that is the antithesis of what we should be doing as highly evolved, sentient, sapient beings who understand right from wrong. and understand
Yeah.
and can judge
Yeah, well,
the
yeah.
environment.
One more thing I want to say about the naturalistic fallacy here is remember, nature is everything. Everything happens in nature. So then, once again, anybody who makes a naturalistic fallacy is always cherry picking the parts of nature that they want to follow and ignoring others. So, what they're doing is they're doing the same thing with nature as Christians do with the Bible, for example. They will pick out certain parts and really, so we cannot use what happens in nature or what is written in a book as a guide. And so what it comes down to is, I suppose what we're getting into is this really, it's sort of like, we're like humans are like Pinocchio. Okay, I'm going to make a Disney reference here. Humans are like Pinocchio that has to learn right from wrong to become a real boy. You know, it sounds funny, I know, but you've
No,
seen.
it's a good analogy. It's a good analogy, and there's much I want to say, but go ahead.
Yeah, and the funny part is that now Jiminy the cricket tried to be Pinocchio's conscience, right? But in the end, that wasn't what really Pinocchio had to learn right from wrong through his experiences, you know. And I think we humans, for the most part, we don't need, like, we have the experience. And here's what I mean is we have the data. We know what's gone on in history. We have documentaries. We have the science. We know what's going on. We know we don't need to eat the animals. We know that they feel pain. It's like dust, a step on a dog's tail. And so we shouldn't have to go through a long process. This should be so simple and so quick. Now, for me, it was quick. But Pafo, here, this is what I think is important.
What gets in the way is money and myths, cultural myths, and money is what's getting in the way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that, but there's something else that I think is going on here. I think what happens is people, they are unable, they don't want to see themselves as a bad person, right? They don't want to think that they could do something so awful. So then they try to deny how awful something is that they've been supporting. And
I'm not sure, Chandler. I might disagree with you. I don't think it's so much cognitive dissonance. I think it's just lack of awareness, lack of information. Honestly, like you're saying that they don't want to think of themselves as being the butchers. They just want to kind of push it out of their mind. I just think it's a lack of exposure to to the horrors and the brutality and what's actually occurring.
yeah, I think, I mean, there may be both that's going on, but I do think there's an element of this, like, where people look, they take things personally. You get what I'm saying? They think
Sure.
that we're making it, when we tell them that what they're doing is, is supporting murder and torture,
Yeah,
they think
the language probably needs to change. We need to tell them that this is what they're supporting. They're not doing it themselves, but I mean they might as well be. But that this is what they are supporting when they eat meat, eggs, dairy, and use animal products and stuff. This is what they're supporting. This is what they are perpetuating. This is what they are contributing to. Those are the terms that we have to use instead of saying you're doing this, because you're selfish and your taste buds are more important than this animal's life. Because we're just making these extreme comparisons that are clear in our mind, but not clear in theirs.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Pafo. I struggle with this greatly because here's the deal. While literally it's true that they are basically hiring somebody else continually to murder and rape animals, while literally it's true, we have to be so careful how we come across with this because we don't want to put them on the offense. We want to. We want them to listen and we want them to be exposed to the information so that they can change,
We
but
just gotta share the information, man. That's what it comes down to. We
yeah,
should not really engage with people because it's not about winning the argument. It's not about winning the fight. It's not about you will never persuade someone that way. I know this, and I don't try to. I just literally seek to share the information. But when people make arguments that are unreasonable and illogical and they're not well informed, then that's when I do my best to to try and enlighten them, and that gets perceived as um, whatever, sanctimonious, or I'm too extreme, I'm too controlling. We're trying to dictate what they can and cannot do with their bodies. Well, I mean, the test results are pretty clear. The statistics and the studies are there. Like we're doing, we're holding up a mirror and showing them like what's actually taking place. It's not about judgment. It's not about
Oh.
condescension. It's not. We're not trying to be condescending. But literally, like like for example, the difference between vegetarianism and veganism. I mean, there's a gigantic difference there. That
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that they don't understand. But obviously, if you're making the transition, then that's usually the transition a lot of people make. That's what I
right.
did.
Yeah, yeah, that's how it was for me. And
But
a word about that I want to say
yeah,
here is, yeah, see, first, I went vegetarian because it seemed very clear that, well, yeah, an animal has to die in order to obtain that meat, But the dairy and egg thing, particularly, for example, is that's harder for people to get. Now, Magnus Binding explained it so perfectly in his book, Why We Should Go Vegan. And there's so many other sources that detail that the process of obtaining milk from these cows always involves killing of calves, and the process of getting eggs always involves killing tons of male chicks. Because they're
billions of
useless.
chicks, billions of chicks are ground up alive, like
Yeah,
every week. And
yeah, and
you just have to see the conditions. You just have to see the process and what goes into it to understand that there is a conception in people's minds that these cows are grazing happily in the fields and cows just naturally produce milk. No, cows produce milk when they're pregnant to feed their babies, and so in order to get the milk, you have to artificially inseminate them. And you and Monique were talking about this the other day. You kind of, I wanted to correct you on that. They don't actually fist their vagina. They insert their arm into the anus and the rectum to push the cervix into the position, and then they use a tool to artificially inseminate. I mean, it's just as horrible, but it's just as invasive and intrusive and terrible.
yeah,
But the point
yeah.
is, they use them. They use an instrument to artificially inseminate. In the cow's vagina, and they insert their arm in to move the cervix into the right position and to try to loosen them up, as they say. And it's done all the time, and people laugh about it and everything. But think about what is being done. Just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
That cow is not, is not consenting to that. Like, the animals are not consenting to what we do to them, and there is no need for us to do this to them.
Yeah,
Name
yeah,
name off all the milks, man. Soy,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
all these other sources of calcium and protein, and there's all these other great forms of milk that can be just incorporated into our diets without the use of animal products, without the use of dairy and
Yeah, 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 definitely,
what goes into it.
totally agree with you, man. But what I got to say here, see, here's the thing: is that, yeah, first of all, there's so many alternative, plant-based alternatives that are healthier for us. But here's the deal: a lot of people don't even know this, and I didn't know this. I didn't realize that cows only produce milk when when they've given birth, when they're pregnant or given birth to a calf. I didn't realize that. Like, of course, when I was a kid, I don't know that kind of stuff.
It's the
But
perception that's created that their udders are just there, and if we don't milk them, they'll explode.
yeah,
It's good for them.
there was
It's
a
good for
guy
them
who
to get
said
milk.
that to
Yeah.
me. There was a guy who said that to me. There was this guy
They're not
at
milk
work.
machine. They're not milk machines. They produce milk just like every other mammal for their young, and
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah,
But I want to get back to
yeah,
the appeal to nature, and then really I don't know, man. The idea of these philosophies that we're trying to institute, which are meant to be, which are meant to help raise awareness of the environmental concerns and this holistic systems mentality that we're trying to promote and institute, and how the veganism is it is a no-brainer. It's the natural progression of the belief, first of all, as pantheists believe, that all of life is divine. That if the universe is God, that means nature is divine. If nature is divine, that means all animals, especially sentient life forms that can think and feel, should be treated with the utmost respect. And so the natural progression of this is veganism. It's a vegan lifestyle, and like it's so important. And then there's that distinction we need to make, that we're not trying to glorify nature. We're not trying to glorify primitive nature. We recognize that we are products of nature, and our intellect and our ability to distinguish between right and wrong and judge and think and reason comes from nature. But we have to, our ethics should start from the level that we're at, not go backwards and think lions kill and they chase down and rip apart antelopes, so it's okay. And because I have these little tiny canines, that I can do the same thing. I can, even though I'm not doing that, I'm paying other people, and it's this whole process that it goes through. Like that, we got to get rid of the naturalistic fallacies. We got to get rid of this excuse, that because something occurs in nature, therefore it's good and it's acceptable in human society. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, and see, Puffle, I know you have high hopes for like this pantheist type of movement, and while I have some mixed feelings, but mostly just related to language. But see, here's the deal. Yeah, you can't promote a life-centered philosophy while you're mutilating all these animals. It just doesn't work. It's incompatible, And so, absolutely, I would agree that if what's important to you is nature, you just cannot. Yeah, you just can't be. You don't destroy, you don't torture your pets, for example. People's pets are important to them. People have dogs, cats, hamsters, whatever, and they would never dream of doing these things to them. They're not human, but they would not dream of hurting them, and they would be so upset and seek legal action against somebody who came and killed their dog. And yet then they support doing it to some other animal when there is no difference.
We gotta circumnavigate that and make the connection and show people chickens and pigs and cows and calves and lambs, and when they're frolicking and they're happy and they're free, and how just how attentive they are, how alert and awake and sort of just full of life and vibrancy. We don't see that. We just think of the animal as the product, and then if we happen to come in contact with one of those animals throughout our lives, of course we wouldn't treat them that way, but then we're not in contact with them, or people are raised in a system, in a sort of like a rural farm situation, where it's the indoctrination. They're just inculcated in the idea that, okay, these are the animals, therefore this is our job, this is our profession, this is what we do, we're providing a need for others. All of the misconceptions and the programming needs to change. We need to view all life as sacred, okay? And that is the starting point, and then everything else follows from there. We can make the distinctions, and there's the subtle nuances, like, do I let the bed bugs overrun my beddings because I respect and care for all life? No, it is so freaking obvious. Let me just state this, okay? We are not talking about self-defense. If an animal, any animal, human or non-human, is attacking you and threatening you, and you are in danger, you owe it to yourself, to honor and respect your own life principle and protect yourself. But self-defense is not the reason people torture and mutilate other animals. Okay, it's for taste and pleasure and tradition. So getting back to it, like, of course we make the distinction that, like, why do they go to the extreme like that? They say, okay, so veganism, you're trying to, well, then what about insects? What about bugs? What about all the plants? What about all the animals that are losing their habitat because of what you're harvesting, the grain and stuff like that? And it's like, I don't understand. So you don't care about animals, but then all of a sudden you care more about animals than any one of us does. They go to the other extreme. That just shows you it's an argument. It's not a valid point. It's just a counter argument to try and justify what they're already doing.
Yeah. Well, and here's the deal, Papa.
Go ahead.
Here's what's interesting about it. I think, and of course, I'm kind of running out of time, but here's the thing. What we need to go into, because we're going to continue this conversation, is we need to go deeper into why do people try to justify it? Why do they feel the need to justify it unless on some level they know it's wrong?
I want
You
to
know
go
what I
into
mean?
the connection and the crossover with pantheism, that that this is the natural progression of pantheistic thought when you follow it to its logical conclusion. Um, I want to get into that, like in merging these movements, because it's it just seems so organic to me, and it makes so much sense, but other people aren't getting that, and especially with my friend, who I would really like to have him on so we can discuss this, because he has this mentality. He has a much more sort of he justifies it by appealing to the systems model of, part of an ecosystem, all life forms, feed on other life forms, and it really it really borderlines the appeal to nature. I think I'm gonna go ahead and say it, that I think he is guilty of the appeal to nature fallacy, logical fallacy. So that's what I would really like to talk about. That's what I wanted to talk about today, but he's not available. Won't be available.
Yeah, we'll have him on another time, and I think this will
Actually,
be.
you know what's weird, Chandler? It's almost 6. That's when he gets off work. So I don't know, man. I could stay on here and maybe he'll join me if you wanted to try that.
Well, I don't know. Here's an idea. How about you try to set up a hangout yourself? Because I have to go to bed. So if you set up a hangout yourself and host it on your channel that way, then you can join him,
Just
and
like
you
a
two
part
can be.
two. Yeah, we'll just have
Yeah,
like a
you
part
two.
because
Yeah,
this really
you two.
feels like an introduction, man. Like there's so much we could say. I feel like I never get out everything I want to say. So
Yeah, absolutely. This is an endless discussion, man. But this is important. I would say that this veganism takes high priority. It takes high priority over, whatever ontology of whatever sort of religion somebody believes. It's the very basis of anything. Because unless we're first,
we're talking about compassion. We're talking about empathy, man. We're talking about
yeah,
human ethics and ideals, and that's what it comes down to, is literally like how we treat other life forms. There's nothing more important than that.
yeah, what could possibly be more important? Without that, any other philosophy does not matter. Without that, nothing
It's
else really
useless.
matters. Because everything I ever do, including all of my work, on the free will illusion stuff, all of that is merely to give people a grounding of reality, to help lead them into veganism. It's helped get people into this idea of, because as long, if you don't see people as deserving to be punished, you won't seek revenge. It's about reducing harm. It's about compassion. That too is part of a life-centered philosophy. But yes, but yeah, how we treat other life forms, nothing could possibly be more important. And we're going to have more future talks on this, because it never ends.
Yeah, there's a lot of opposition. There's a lot of people just need to be educated, man. They just need to be informed, and they just need to be made aware of the things that we're aware of, and that doesn't make us better. We're not better because we have these higher ideals. It sucks. It's such a burden, man. Like the more the more difficult it is to coexist in a society that's moving in the opposite direction. Like we're a minority, and that needs to change, but it is changing. I do have hope that this is the
Yeah.
direction that
Yeah. And see,
humanity is
here's the
moving in.
deal. Pafo, here's the deal. Yeah. This is something, yeah, it's not about us thinking we're better than anybody. And something else that's important, there is no reward for us. There is absolutely no financial reward, no social reward. In fact, there's a lot of negative effects that come along with being vegan, because everybody hates you. They think you're an extremist,
I agree, and I know what you're saying, but I will say we're gonna live longer. The health benefits are like undeniable. That like we will have a more vibrant, healthy balanced, physiology. Our physical systems are. It's so much easier to metabolize, plant-based, plant-based protein and nutrition and stuff. So that's the nutrition and our health
Yeah.
is the one benefit.
Yeah,
But I'm
you're
just saying, like,
absolutely right.
emotionally and socially, psychologically, socially, it's actually we're going against the grain, so it's much more difficult. Yeah, I agree.
Right, but and one important thing though is quite a while ago I stopped basing my life on what other people are going to think of me, because really hardly anything I do earns me a good reputation. It really doesn't. And so I do things, the things I say are because they're truthful and because they're just right, about the right way to live and causing the least harm. And so if people don't like that, big deal. They don't have to listen to our videos. They don't have to listen to our podcasts. It's as simple as that. But those who do listen will get something out of it, and there are those out there who do understand it. So before I end this broadcast, any last words?
I appreciate the opportunity to to talk about this stuff, man. And you say you don't worry about what people think about you, but I mean, I hold you in very high regard, and I respect you immensely, and we've grown to be really good friends through the podcast and everything, and the work that you're doing. So just the people are going to appreciate it, man. And maybe not even in your lifetime. Maybe these podcasts will just be out there in the ether in the internet world, and that someone's going to stumble across them and be like, holy shit, these guys were like way ahead of their time, like they were futurists, and they were pointing us in the right direction. Let's model our our societies and our cultures based on Chandler and Pafo and and Jamie and George. Yeah, wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah, and that's why we record these things. That's why we do it, because look, life is short, man. And the reason for recording things or writing books is so it remains long after we're here.
Right.
We'll be too dead to know or care what people think. But right now, I hope that people are benefiting hundreds of years from now based on the conversations we have. And it's a pleasure talking with you, Pothole.
Sure,
And we'll
man.
do
And
it again.
don't forget WSD. WSD. I don't want to forget about him, and Trick. Trick was he's been a huge influence on me too. So and then Mitch and who else? Somebody else. Can't remember. Michael. Maybe?
Man, there's so many co-hosts that have joined us on
Yeah.
that show that you haven't even met because they haven't been available.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I just didn't want to leave anybody out. So we're all trying to make the world a better place. We're all trying to just minimize suffering and unite people, and really just influence and inspire and encourage higher thinking. Raising human consciousness. That's what it's all about, and that's what you're doing,
Yep.
Chandler. So
Yep. That's what it's all about. So I'm going to end the broadcast now, but thanks again to everybody listening. Bye.